Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. He is a member of the U.S. House of Representatives from Nebraska who has long been concerned about protecting Americans' conscience rights, particularly in healthcare law. Earlier today, he presided at a congressional forum at Georgetown University, of all places, called In Defense of Liberty, a bipartisan response to President Obama's HHS mandate. Here to tell us about it and give us his thoughts on what happens in Congress in the wake of the Supreme Court decision is Congressman Jeff Fortenberry. Right. Congressman, thanks for being back.
Good to see you.
Let's start with this forum. What was this forum and why Georgetown? Was Sharon Fluck there?
She didn't make it. I didn't see her in the audience. But I thought it was important to hold that discussion at Georgetown on the respect for rights of conscience and religious liberty. Georgetown, probably not by its own choosing, has become sort of an epicenter, if you will, for this debate. The president spoke there. We held the forum in the same hall where the president spoke. The Secretary of Health and Human Services, Kathleen Sebelius, spoke there about a month ago. And the Georgetown law student was the one who created quite a furor on Capitol Hill. So I thought it was appropriate to maybe provide a little balance and hold a bipartisan forum there on the deeper philosophical problem in the healthcare law as it erodes healthcare liberties, as it attacks the rights of conscience and religious freedom.
We mentioned that a moment ago with Bill Donahue, and he was talking about if we get this religious exemption, things will be better. But that doesn't solve the problem for the mom and dad who have a small shop or the people running businesses who maybe their consciences are being offended as well. What do we do for them in the light of this decision?
Well, that's one of the reasons that we wrote the bill called Respect for Rights of Conscience Act. It tries to go deeper than just carving out who the government allows not to be coerced into basically following this law. There's a deeper philosophical principle here that goes to the founding of our country that's been operative in our healthcare culture until this bill passed, namely that you shouldn't be coerced. You shouldn't be forced to choose by your government whether to obey the law or violate deeply held reasoned beliefs. This most perniciously, of course, affects faith-based institutions, the Catholic Church being one of them, which has a huge presence in healthcare, caring for the poor and vulnerable, but it also affects other people of goodwill who may object to certain drugs and procedures, having to pay for them in their healthcare plan as small business people. So we need to get underneath the principle here and not just carve out exemptions, basically submitting ourselves on bended knee to the government saying, please don't do this to us, but it's okay if you do that to them. It's better to have a deeper philosophical discussion about this principle.
Where does this Supreme Court majority ruling place this whole question of conscience rights? To my eye, just listening to the guests we've had on earlier, it seems the Supreme Court is saying, here's your blank check, call it a tax, and you can compel people to do whatever you'd like. I mean, isn't that what Kathleen Sebelius is doing? You have to provide these services. If you don't, here's a tax or a fine. Isn't that constitutionally protected?
The bill in its entirety now holds, which means that Secretary Sebelius's right to impose what she defines as preventative services, even though they violate the fundamental ethical sensibilities of many Americans, have to be obeyed. Now the emphasis shifts back, if you will, to the legislature, United States Congress, to either deal with this or not, or before the court is one set of lawsuits left that actually deal with this question as to whether or not this is a violation of a constitutional principle in of itself. It violates the intention of Congress in the Religious Freedom Restoration Act and other previous laws that have been upheld. All the Respect for Rights of Conscience law does, or bill that we've proposed, which has 224 co-sponsors, by the way, a bipartisan effort, because it's not about politics, it's not about partisanship, it's about principle. It restores the rights of conscience and religious liberty that were operative in our healthcare system and respected prior to this law.
Before this law passed. Your thoughts on, it seems everybody today, and I'm going to play the two presidential candidates here. Here is the president responding to the ruling. I want to get your opinion of what he said. Roll the tape.
I know there will be a lot of discussion today about the politics of all this, about who won and who lost. That's how these things tend to be viewed here in Washington. But that discussion completely misses the point. Whatever the politics, today's decision was a victory for people all over this country whose lives will be more secure because of this law and the Supreme Court's decision to uphold it.
What do you make of that? And Is this good for him? I hate to drag out the political argument he was invoking there, but is this good politically for the president, having won what is no doubt a victory at the Supreme Court?
Well, first of all, let me clarify something. I didn't vote for this bill when it came before Congress because I think we need the right type of health care reform. But what we got instead was a massive 3,000-page or so bill that shifts more unsustainable spending to the government, that erodes fundamental health care liberties, that does things like cut Medicare. You've already seen costs going up exorbitantly for small businesses. The average family now is paying an extra $2,000 in costs, and that was to be resolved. The right type of health care reform would actually improve health care outcomes while reducing costs and protecting vulnerable people. There are much better ways to do this. So it's going to be a robust political debate. I don't know if the president's correct politically or not. I think that, again, the emphasis shifts back to the United States Congress as we debate this, and it's going to be completely caught up in the electoral cycle for the president.
That's what I mean. Even if you submitted this bill, you've got co-sponsors. This could go to the floor tomorrow.
Right.
Where's it going to go, Congressman Fortenberry?
Well, by our process, it would go to the Senate to die.
But Senator Harry Reid is not going to bring up this bill.
In fact, the Senate already heard this bill. We got a significant minority vote. 48 senators courageously voted for this, and we were pleased to see that. But look, the question now really does shift back to the American people. Do you want this law or not? And that's what our elections are going to be about.
Here's Mitt Romney, who made a similar case. Roll the tape.
As you might imagine, I disagree with the Supreme Court's decision, and I agree with the dissent. What the court did not do on its last day in session, I will do on my first day if elected President of the United States. And that is, I will act to repeal Obamacare.
Do you think this has put this issue of health care front and center in this presidential season?
Well, absolutely. I think it's a manifestation of a deeper philosophical divide as to how we're going to move forward as a country, how we define our narrative as a nation. Are we going to invest more authority, more power in Washington-based solutions, or are we going to devolve power, uphold what we call mediating institutions, family, faith, civil society, try to develop better market systems for more robust access to affordable health care products such as catastrophic insurance or not? Again, what this bill is shifting huge cost that we cannot afford, that we do not have the money for, to more government spending in order to fix the health care system. And at the same time, though, it's eroding health care liberties such as the rights of conscience.
30 seconds. Does this give a blank check to Congress telling them you can do anything, the American people will do whatever you want them to do. You can get them to buy any service so long as you call it a tax. Is that a dangerous precedent that this ruling sets up?
It's an interesting question that you raise as to whether or not that now is the legal pathway, the congressional pathway to do anything you want.
Very good. Congressman Jeff Fortenberry.